This build is centered around the Sword of Night and Flame and its super strong weapon skill, the Night Comet. When the sword got nerfed back in March, some of the community had knee-jerk reactions such as, unless you're using fire, this is garbage now. FromSoft destroyed this weapon, just use Loadout straight. This is still one of the best weapons in the game, but only if you know how to set up your character correctly, which is the purpose of this video. So I'm going to go through what makes this build good. First off, it does a bunch of damage. It's super simple to play, we're just going to use the Night Comet over and over. You're also really hard to kill with the fact you've got high vigor and stay at a safe range to cast your lasers. All the equipment, items and spells are all easy to acquire, and the build curves nicely through the game from the early, mid, late to Journey 2. So I'm just going to get straight into the video from here. Just a small warning, I think I was drunk while recording the next part. Okay, enough of that, sorry. You can use Radahn's helmet if you like, but I think it looks horrible. It actually blocks your view. It feels like it's taking up 90% of your screen, so I refuse to endorse it personally. Instead, I recommend you get the Banished Knight Helm, which can be found by farming the knight in the Cathedral Dragon Communion. It weighs the same as Radahn's, has almost identical stats, and fits in well with the aesthetic. On to weapons. For your right hand, the Sword of Night and Flame, obviously. You need to upgrade this ASAP. In your left hand, a Finger Seal. No need to upgrade, as the only spell we'll be using is Golden Vow, and Golden Vow doesn't scale at all. Golden Vow increases our damage and tankiness for 80 seconds. Fill your Wondrous Physic with a Cracked Magic Shrouding tier and an Intelligence Not Crystal tier. This will increase your laser damage for 3 minutes. When using this build, you'll have no competition but yourself. So that's why we're going with the Mimic tier as our Spirit Summon. Now in my experience, build videos can be a little confusing. You're basically dumped with a bunch of information and you're expected to remember it all. Which is why I've made this summary sheet here in the hope it makes this guide much more useful. If you're liking this build and content so far, please consider subscribing, it would be very cool of you. If you plan on going to Journey 2, you can get the upgraded versions of the talismans I've selected. And I should definitely bring up the Magic Scorpion Charm, which is a talisman which makes you deal more magic damage. I haven't selected it for 2 reasons. The first reason being you become much less tanky, you take an extra 10% damage, and you're also losing a talisman slot which will be used for a talisman which makes you tankier. The second reason is that the quest to obtain the item is ridiculously annoying to complete. I will say though, it's definitely a very good item for this build. And lastly, the Pearl Drake talisman's interchangeable with other defensive talismans. Alright, before we get to stats, I'm going to show you how to actually play the build and what gameplay looks like with it. So for the extreme basics, press and hold the skill button, then press attack for the laser or strong attack for the flame sweep. The laser on the Night Comet does magic damage and it scales with int. Also has insane base damage, which means you don't really need to level int to make it do damage. And then this flame sweep, the alternate skill, it deals fire damage and scales with faith. It can be useful against mobs or enemies outside of boss fights or against bosses with 0 fire resist. Alright, and now for an actual example. So before the boss fight or any difficult enemy, you want to drink your Wondrous Flask for the damage buffs, and then with your Finger Seal equipped, cast Golden Vow. Golden Vow lasts about 80 seconds, so if the boss has a second phase, you can recast it. And remember, after entering the fog, remember to summon your spirit friend to come help you out. Battling bosses is all about timing. You want to make sure your laser fully connects to hit the full damage. So for this reason, you need to make sure you cast it at the right time. So to cast it at the right time, what you can do is wait for the boss to finish an animation, and then you get an easy hit off like here. Or you can always, this is the easiest way to do it by the way, you just wait for the boss to target your spirit summon and then hit it then. So for here, the boss is staggered and just hitting him freely as he attacks the spirit summon. The build's really good versus some of the harder late game bosses. To give 2 examples, the first one would be the Godskin duo. You can just kite the big boy and laser him at range while your spirit tanks the other guy. And the second is McKeith, which normally gives lots of people trouble. You can just breeze through his first form while your Spirit Friend tanks. And the second phase is really dangerous, but the same tactic applies. And once he's locked onto your friend, you can just take him out. Finally, for stats. Right, so when starting the game, you want to start as the Confessor, ideally. And the later you get into the game, the less this will matter. But in the early game, if you're not Confessor, you'll be wasting a few points. So the first milestone is to get up to 15 Faith, 14 Intelligence, 12 Strength, and 12 Dex, and use the Wanderer's Flask with the Int Knot and Faith Knot crystal tiers, and this will allow you to get plus 10 Faith and Int, and allow you to use the Sword of Night of Flame, but only for 3 minutes, right? You'll be able to hit this breakpoint at level 16. You might think level 16 is a bit low and not worth talking about, but actually for this build you're able to get 95% of the equipment right at the start of the game. I'm just going to list up everything you can have before you even get in the first boss fight. This can all be acquired without combat, and the latter portion requires you to use the Dectus Lift, which can also be used without combat. So this is what all your stats should look like if you've hit milestone 1. I've highlighted the stats you must have in goldish, and remember for milestone 1 you'll have plus 10 Int and Faith from your flask, so that means you can use Golden Flower and the Sword of Night and Flame. So moving on to milestone 2, if you don't have 13 mind because you're a different class, get up to 13 mind. I've marked with a plus sign what stats you're meant to be increasing at this stage. We need more vigor to sort of match our level of 51. So I've also increased intelligence and faith so that you're able to use the Sword of Night and Flame without having to use the Wanderer's Flask. For milestone 3, we're going to increase vigor, mind and endurance. With the increased mind, we're going to be able to cast Night Comet many more times. And with the increased endurance, we're going to be able to now have an increased equip load and wear heavy armor. And also increased vigor to survive versus many bosses. By the time you're level 80 and hit milestone 3, you should have all the equipment I laid out earlier. For the final milestone, milestone 4, we're going to increase our vigor up to 50 to become ridiculously tanky. We're going to increase our mind by 4, which means we can cast an extra Night Comet. And our intelligence is go up to 42 to increase our laser damage by about 15 to 20%. You'll be more than strong enough to beat the final boss at this point. If you wish to go to Journey 2 and get even stronger, I would recommend putting some more points in Mind Vigor and Intelligence and Faith. I wouldn't waste points on Strength and Dexterity ever. This build still very much works in Journey 2, 3 and beyond, by the way. That's basically it for the video. You should have all the info you need to beat the game and have fun while doing it. If you like this content, make sure to subscribe and like. Thanks for watching.